Welcome to Stories from the Community Development Practice Hub, a series of interviews with community development practitioners from across Birmingham. Today we'll be talking to Rashta Butt, who is the Community Development and Centre Manager at St Margaret's Community Trust, a multi-purpose community centre in Ward End, Birmingham. In this interview, Rashta talks about the Diverse Garden project, which brought people together during the COVID-19 lockdowns. Hi there, Rashta. I wonder if you could tell us a little about you and how you came to be working in this community development role.
So I worked as a play worker for 24 years and predominantly did my work working with children aged 5 to 12. And as part of that role, obviously, you work with a whole family. You don't just work with a child. So through my kind of play work life journey, working with a whole family led me then to kind of supporting families in the community. And had the opportunity when I left my role in 2013 to get the opportunity to actually run it, to be a community development worker. And so I've been doing that for the last 8 years.
Okay.
And so a part of that kind of inspiration came from play workers. It's by motivating local people to help them make a difference in their neighbourhood and helping, supporting and enabling communities to recognise their gifts and talents and strengths, and empowering local people is a passion of mine. I get great comfort in seeing people make a difference, people being part of a community, walking alongside projects where local people actually then have the confidence to lead. I love being part of their kind of journey and the work that they do. I see friendships being formed. I see connections in the community, and all of and actually local people just motivate me when I see all of that. It's quite satisfying.
Okay, now do you live in the community you work with?
I don't live too far from the community.
Yeah.
I'm a 5-minute car drive away. So yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about the work or the project you're going to talk about during this interview?
The project I'm actually going to focus on is a project called the Diverse Garden.
Okay.
And this garden was funded by NNS during lockdown. And during lockdown, we obviously closed the building due to government guidelines and started off by distributing windowsill kind of grow boxes to local community as a method of staying connected and checking on people's well-being. And we realised quite quickly that there was a great passion in growing, and people were asking for so much more than just grow packs. People wanted more seeds, plants, advice. So as a result, I got at the local allotment sites, there was many plots that were available, and so I took on a plot. Now one plot is quite big in size, and it's quite overwhelming for one person to kind of look after, and especially when there's kind of physical health issues or people have never done any growing before. So what I did was I divided the plot into 10 mini plots, and then 10 mini plots was like 10 mini stories really. Yeah. So we started by arranging a big dig day, which was inviting local people to come to the allotment sites and kind of connect with your space and see who was interested in actually taking on the growing opportunity. So we then gave out a plot. So the 10 stories are, for example, there's, one of the plots belongs to somebody who was quite poorly during COVID, but needed some time to get out of the house, and her family were really eager for her to do, and she loved growing, so she took on a plot. There was a friends group, there was a church group, there was a cancer sufferer, there was a homeschooling group, and it's diverse garden because the diversity is in age, gender, ethnicity, faith, ability. It's just completely, and it's really inspired people to. Some of those people can actually grow, some can't grow, some are new to the actual whole concept of gardening.
Yeah.
And some people don't have a back garden, lived in flats. So what the Diverse Garden did was, it was a place for people to come out to share skills, to tackle some of the social isolation, create new friendships, was a meeting place, and it also became an intergenerational activity. So when we were giving out windowsill boxes to people in the homes, there was grandparents, parents, children all taking part in growing, and it was also connecting people back to their heritage. It doesn't matter what culture, ethnicity, background you have. Growing is kind of part of most people's heritage. Agriculture, people have grown together. So it was really nice to see a lot of the older generation reconnect back to growing. So yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's universal, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I just wondered, could you tell us a little bit more about how you approached working with the community on this project?
So like I said, one of the things that we did was deliver the windowsill boxes that we delivered, but this also then gave us an opportunity to do their doorstep visits. So when we were delivering the windowsill boxes, we were then connecting with people and having a conversation. But we also have a WhatsApp group, which we kind of share our information from. We've got 90 members on our WhatsApp group, and so they ripple on then to other friends and families. And it was encouraging. So neighbours who were attending, who were part of our WhatsApp group, would then just inform other people. So it was a lot of it was from the community was word of mouth, and from us was doorstep visits and WhatsApp and Zoom.
Okay, that's really interesting. I wonder then, could you give us an example of how people were enabled to participate and contribute to the project? I know you said you had like 10 different stories, so maybe talk us through one of those.
So one of the stories I can talk to you about is a local elderly woman who during lockdown was caring for her. So both were very able-bodied, very active members of the pillars of the community, but through lockdown started to have quite a number of their close family friends who passed away through COVID. Not necessarily through COVID, but they're losing a lot of community members, friends, family members. And I think there was a struggle because we weren't allowed to, people weren't allowed to go out and grieve with family members. So it was almost, they were finding out. So this particular couple were finding out through friends, were not able to go and say their farewells. And the husband was struggling quite severely with the fact that he had arrived into the country in the 1950s, and all his fellow friends, family members who came in the country with it, he was now beginning to lose a lot of them. Right. And then there was a fear of death that then became quite apparent to him. He then started suffering from anxiety, depression, sleepless nights, and had never experienced any of this sort of emotions in the past to this degree. And his wife became his sole carer. And also because she was a very outgoing person, she started to struggle. So what we did was offer a plot to this lady. And what it did for her was, one, it gave her some time and a respite to come out the house. She also would bring her husband along sometimes to the plot, but also they also have a garden and started to grow and taking pride in the garden, would get up in the morning and, take pictures of the flowers in the garden and send them to us. Wow. So it was a method of looking after not just the lady's well-being, but the both husband and wife's well-being, which just, it's so truly appreciated. And they both would come to the allotments, and it was a safe place for them to come out the house. Wow. They weren't living too far from the allotments, so transport wasn't an issue. And also they could come, the allotments were open 7 days a week, so there was no restrictions on that. And they still hold a plot at the moment.
Wow. And so I assume as well they would have interacted with other people if it's a diverse garden.
Absolutely. So then they started sharing some of their kind of skills in terms of, and also shared some of the vegetables that they grew together. And they would go home and, because there's quite a lot of different ethnicities on the diverse garden, a lot of them just would take some of the grown vegetables and go home and cook in different methods. For example, pumpkin was one of the things that really kind of inspired me. Was it was cooked so that we have an Afro-Caribbean.
Okay.
So she went home and took a pumpkin home and she cooked a recipe, and then we had an Asian version of a pumpkin recipe, and then we had an English version of a pumpkin, and it was really lovely to see how our pumpkin And food brings people together anyway, but it was, the pumpkin created such amazing conversations about and then sharing the food together.
So not just for Halloween.
No.
So what's your most memorable moment from your work on the project?
Oh, I don't know which one to pick out, to be honest, David. It's been a real, the last 18 months, I really kind of, if I focus on things, it's very difficult to pick out one moment. But what I can say is that there was some challenges at the beginning, and one of the memorable moments that I do, when I was thinking about this, I can think of is there was a homeschooling mom who does her gardening. She wears the full abaya and the niqab, so you can only see her eyes. And an elderly gentleman who was an existing plot holder when we arrived, who kind of really found it difficult to accept that within this culture, women could actually achieve something. And it took a while for that relationship to build and to assumptions to be challenged. But one kind of, it brings a smile to my face as I talk about it, but she was away digging in her little plot with her 2 children, and the children had seen somebody with a sunflower on their plot, and they were really, excited about this sunflower. She didn't have a sunflower, and I saw this elderly gentleman walking up with this big sunflower plant with a massive sunflower, and he was walking towards this homeschooling mom. He actually bought that plant for her to plant in her plot, and said to her that he'd been watching her children get some pleasure from seeing that sunflower plant, that he wanted the children to have a sunflower plant. But it started something, a different relationship, a different conversation with this pair then, and he then started to support her in her plot. So yeah.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, that's lovely. And so you talked about challenges. Were there any other challenges that you faced as a development worker when initiating and enabling this project, and how you overcame them?
So like I said, one of the biggest challenges that we faced was the group was predominantly women, and although it was mixed, but predominantly Asian women. And when we arrived at the local allotment sites, there were existing plot holders. There was only 6 existing plot holders, but they were elderly white gentlemen who just absolutely didn't believe that Asian women could forget the growing. They were just not convinced there was going to be any activity in cleaning their plots, digging. There was such negativity that this isn't going to happen. Why have you come here? This is just going to be, we're just going to waste another space. It's going to be over. I mean, I can go on and on about the negative conversations. But what we did in every aspect of the project was try and involve them. So they were part of that journey to have some conversations. But we knew that the only way some of those assumptions are challenged are when they see some things happening in reality. And as they've seen the progress of the project of the garden, I've seen people come to the actual allotments, taking their passion into their growing, looking after their plots, actually then, and what they did, what some of the ladies did was would go to the plot holders and ask for advice and support, and just nobody wanted to come in there and said that they were the experts. We knew that there was talent amongst us all. So it was a very gradual process where, where it took a while, and we're still working on that journey about tackling stereotypes and assumptions about what women on one hand can do, but then Asian women, their role in a community or in a household is, and when they see that there's so much other things that women can actually do, it's lots of interesting conversations happen, David.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, then, so I wonder if you could tell us a little about the impact on the individuals and maybe the wider community of this piece of work. I mean, I think already, one thing you've just discussed is wonderful, that, people that might have had assumptions about each other have come together to talk.
Yeah, but it really completely supported people's well-being. Because the other thing that I didn't mention, we also have a tea shed on the actual allotment site on our plot. And so some of the ladies come and our families come to grow, but those that don't really want to grow, we have a tea shed where they can just come and sit, have a cup of tea.
Okay.
If they want to have a little bit, even if they want to water somebody's plot, they just do that.
Yeah.
But it just supports people's well-being. Lots of new friendships have been formed. There's a lot of community cohesion. There's sharing of skills and new skills. There's a lot of growing veg that is not from, a cultural vegetable. So some of the seeds and vegetables are not common in the shops, and people have bought seeds from abroad, and then being able to share that with other plot holders.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and you said like children are there with their parents.
Yeah. I was just going to say it's an intergenerational family activity. One of the plot holders has taught somebody else how to just simply thing like how do you dig potatoes effectively, properly, rather than you just stabbing the potatoes. We've all learned, me including, how you dig up a potato. You think it's just simple, but there's a knack to how you do that. There's a lot of community connections happening, a lot of people's connection to their heritage, because people talk about, we used to grow as a child.
Yeah.
So there's overall, in one word, it just has completely supported people's well-beings and has brought a community together in a safe place during lockdown.
That's really good to hear. And it sounds like the project will have sustainability. It sounds like people are really invested in that plot, and maybe, do you think they might expand or look at other plots down the line?
So it has already expanded, David. So we've now moved into another plot. But what we've done is this is 10 mini plots. We've now gone into 6 mini plots, where the plots are slightly bigger. Yeah. So some of the people have moved on to a slightly bigger plot, but 2 of the ladies have actually taken on their own plots.
Wow, that's really good.
So there's and also financially, for a lot of them, for a number of weeks over the harvesting time, people have enough veg then that they don't need to necessarily go to the shops to buy veg. They've got certain things in the house and can actually go away and prepare a meal from what they grow in at the allotments.
Wow. I can say as well, it's kind of, local allotments are really weird, aren't they? It's kind of, if people don't use them, it's really easy for the council to sell them off for housing and stuff. So it's nice. When
we first went to our local allotments, there's 22 plots, and there was only 6 occupied.
Yeah.
And so since we've been there, we only have 1 vacant at the moment.
Wow, that's really good, isn't it?
And that's about introducing the space to local people, because this particular allotment site is quite hidden away from the street. So it's now been introduced to the local community, and people have really been inspired from taking on that space.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really good to hear. So I suppose that's really interesting. I suppose just turning to you for a minute. Mm-hmm. And just thinking about your professional development, what was the most important thing, or something you learned about how you work from your time on the project?
Well, what's been interesting is this for me, and growing is not my skill. Outdoors is not my favorite place to be, and getting my nails dirty is definitely not something I do. And I think it's realizing people do have the skills. People don't need things done to them. If you just let people have the experience and the space and the opportunity, it's amazing what can become off that space. And so, standing back, it's been really important. Just the only thing I did was just create and offer a space. I've done absolutely nothing else. The community have created everything else on that allotment site. So it's believing in local people and not always being the fixer.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. So I guess it's kind of a similar question, really, but and you kind of have just given a wonderful insight, is trust people. And I guess it's what insight would you share with other community development practitioners who are thinking of working in strengths-based ways? Just what advice or insight would you offer from your experiences?
I think definitely walk along. Don't just leave them. Walk alongside them. So sometimes it's the process can be quite slow for for residents and community people who probably not had the opportunity. But you've got to trust the process, and you know the people that you work with, so you know how much of hand-holding side by side you need to give. Sometimes you do need to be at the front a little bit just to give people the opportunity to be able to discover their gifts and talents. But once you know that somebody has those, it's just having the trust and the support and walking alongside them and not doing it for them, and then letting them then get that confidence to grow.
So that's the end of our interview, Rashta, and just been a really fascinating to hear you talk about the diverse garden project. It sounds really good. Is there anything you'd like to add to close off the interview?
No, just thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about the project.
No, thank you. It's really inspiring.